Welcome to the Crypto Traders Podcast, simplifying cryptocurrency for traders and investors around the world. Subscribe for interviews with developers, market updates, and a professional look at the future of money. You've come to trust Matthew and Kurt to filter out the noise across social media. Now you can listen on the go. Without further ado, here's the Crypto Traders Podcast.
All right, we are recording. So, little intro. Kurt Wooker Jr. from CryptoTradersPro.com, and you are?
I'm Josiah on behalf of Digibyte.
Beautiful. So we were just talking off air. Josiah and I, full disclosure, are friends. I consider Josiah a friend before I consider him just some guy from Digibyte or some guy from Twitter or whatever. But we were talking about competition, coins, especially as these halvenings come up, we're competing with each other. And I have to treat other people as competitors. We can be friends, but competition is innately like we're fighting what's ultimately a zero-sum game, and I don't think we need 2,000 coins, but maybe we could use 3 to 5 for a time or something. But I don't know. I don't know where we're going from here. So ultimately, what Josiah and I are going to talk about is mining economics. We're going to talk about proof of work tools, FPGA versus ASIC mining, and then tokenization and some of the other stuff that Digibyte's working on, and then ultimately competition in the ecosystem. So I'm a martial artist. I fight people for fun. This is what I enjoy. and it's interesting because I'm very particularly big. I'm 6'3". I weigh 250 pounds when I'm in fight shape. And so there's not a lot of real big guys to be training partners for me. I'm the biggest guy in my gym. So I'm the biggest guy that I ever train with on a regular basis, which means I have to get together with the people I'm going to be competing against in tournament in order to get training in. So we have to be cool with each other while
I'm literally the opposite. I'm 155 pounds if you were to there is not much to me. It's all hoodie right here. Like there is no
I'm quite the opposite. I am a very, very big menacing dude, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I've seen some of your videos and stuff, and I guess like so this is cool, and kind of reaffirming that as well. Like Kurt and I, although we often we butt heads about things, we have some amazing discussions, and like that last video that we did where we really got into the nitty gritty is got to be my favorite video I've done by far. Yeah. We still, I guess, even though like you're right, we're both competing for. There is a finite amount of SHA-256 hash power right now in the world, and we're competing for it basically, even though to a certain degree you've got to also factor in the fact that there is a value for the production of both Digibyte, BSV, Bcash, Bitcoin, all of those other ones like Hunter Coin even, for example, which was the first multi-algo coin, right? Like, so we're all vying for that small amount of hash power. Sure, there is more that is coming on board, and we are. I suppose this kind of comes back to what you've discussed in the past about ASICs, right? Mm-hmm. Why stifle the innovation?
Right.
And
breakthrough.
We'll sit there for a second. No, but I mean, like that's the thing, right? Like, so we're all vying for this particular amount of hash power, and people get more efficient with it. They get better at doing it. There is more of it because people produce more of the chips, but. I mean, so I can. It's interesting as well because we look at other things like, say, for example, XMR, where Monero have forked. Like, what are they at now in terms of hard forks? They're at like a dozen or something almost.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. Just
specifically, like, so they keep the ASICs off the network and things like that. But when you do that, you also decrease your security.
Yeah, significantly. I mean, look at the hash power swings on Monero. If you want to see exactly what would make probably any old school Bitcoiner, anybody for the first 3 to 5 years of Bitcoin, if they were to look at the hash power swings on Monero, they would look at it and say, they'd be like, what is happening on this network? Like, this is just a nightmare. It's a nightmare to see it happen. I mean, we've seen I want to say I've seen maybe 95% drops in hash power after hard forks on Monero. And the reason is ASIC resistance, in my opinion, is it's just like any other technological innovation. It's like when you hear these quotes about Bill Gates talking about 64 kilobits of RAM or whatever, and it's like, okay, or who said that? There's an old quote from like the 1850s saying we should close the patent office because everything that's been invented has been invented.
It's already been invented. We don't need any more.
Right?
They did. They closed it for a day.
That I don't know actually.
I was sure they closed it for like 24, 36 hours or something, and then they're like, actually, nope, we got to reopen it again. So
right. Well, and that's the thing. It's so we're talking about innovation and free market principle, and then telling people arbitrarily that something is perfect. And I mean, that is just the antithesis of everything that I care about. I'm a free market guy. So for me, I'm a free market maximalist first. And therefore, I think coins need to compete. Mining is competition. I mean, that's the point, is even every, Digibyte's what, 15-second block time, correct?
Correct.
So every 15 seconds, every other miner is your enemy. But as soon as you mine that block, it's up to you to have the best connections to the other miners. So now you're cooperative. Every 15 seconds, now you got to be their best friend again.
Yeah.
Because you got to be the one.
For that little bit. Exactly. You want them to tell everybody else that, hey, you actually have won it. And it's actually really quite funny because that's why we see a lot of orphans on multi-algo networks, is because we're not always specifically all interconnected. Now, oftentimes the orphans aren't as violent as they would be on a single algo. For example, like if we take the original Bitcoin, when you have an orphan, oftentimes like the transactions that were in that block themselves will probably not be in the other chain, so they've then got to go back into the mempool and things like that. And so that's why we recommend 6 confirmations as kind of like the industry standard, as it were.
Sure.
But yeah, it is like, so it's really funny because that's the whole idea, is that you don't need to trust anybody where you're not supposed to trust anybody on the network. You're supposed to be adversarial. You are supposed to stand up to like the worst possible scenario on a daily basis of people attacking the network, and it should just survive on its own. And so that was why I suppose, like before we went on air, we were literally talking about everyone sitting around holding hands, singing Kumbaya, going, everybody gets on, like everything is awesome, like with the Lego theme song, right? And it's ridiculous because it's not like that. It's not. It shouldn't be. We are literally especially between you and I, you being BSV and me being more involved with Digibyte, we're vying for that hash power is what keeps the network secure.
Right. So there you go. and that's
this is our intro.
Well, so and that's the point too, is that proof of work ultimately, you are incentivized to prove other miners wrong. That's actually what you're getting paid for. It's not just propagating transactions. You get the block reward if you're the person that proves that that another miner was wrong on their ledger, or at least they weren't right fast enough. And so like that's
it's the same thing though, really.
It is, exactly. So it's like, well, I was the second best runner in the Olympics. It's like, right, and you're not on the Wheaties box. So but that's really the point, is that ultimately it is a co-opetition. So while within its own chain, well, and now there's even the discussion too that like every other fork, so even including things like Litecoin that are on the script algo, is technically stealing market valuation from Bitcoin. So that this sort of, again, kumbaya, like, oh no, we're going to work together, especially Charlie Lee and his no, we're best friends. We don't actually compete with each other. We're the on-ramp for Lightning Network. Right.
That is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard, being like, just the mind boggles. It is when you stop and you sit back and you go, we are going to build our value proposition on being a slightly cheaper on-ramp to the Lightning Network so that other people can then just use Bitcoin. People don't want shitcoin 101. They want Bitcoin in that instance. Like, there is 0 point. If you're on the Lightning Network, you want to transact in Bitcoin.
Right.
Why would you want to like, let's say hypothetically, like, let's take, for example, Skeen Coin. Why would you want to buy Skeen Coin just to get Bitcoin? Like, why? Why would you want to do that? Well, it's got 60-second block timings. Well, that's cool, but so what?
Right.
You don't want Scheme Coin. You don't actually want to buy Scheme Coin at all. You want Bitcoin. That's what you want. And you've got to basically presume that we have what is effectively a Ponzi scheme, and that somebody else is going to buy that off of you so that they can then onboard themselves to the Lightning Network to get Bitcoin. And they then have to hope that there is somebody on the other side who will also buy their Scheme Coin off of them so that they can then buy the Bitcoin.
Yep. Well, and are you familiar with Gresham's law?
No.
It's an economic principle, and it's debated whether or not it's a law or not. But the idea behind it is that all value will ultimately pump to the thing of greatest value. So, like, if you receive Mexican pesos, for example, you are likely to want to figure out a way to maximize turning those pesos into dollars effectively. That's the notion there.
I mean, we can see things like that happening with Venezuela and the Bolivar and things. So, I mean, there's certainly merit to that. I can understand that.
Yeah. So the concept is that even if you have something that is indeed unique and special, something like Monero is a very unique coin, that you still are primarily going to evaluate your Monero holdings based on how much BTC value that they hold, because for the time being, BTC is the thing that's the most valued in the market today, from a market.
It is effectively the reserve currency, and we all measure it based on satoshis. So right now, Digibyte is worth 300 satoshis.
Right.
I mean, that's the same thing, and so it's I could understand where they're coming from. I mean, it's an interesting theory, but I mean that sort of thing. Like, it is the whole everyone sit around and hold hands and we'll all hug it out and
right. But ultimately, first of all, energy is finite. And that's the real problem, is that if energy was infinite, then it wouldn't really matter. You could mine on Grossel and you could mine on, Script or whatever else, and everybody can have their own network and they can become infinitely secure with, whatever. And that's not reality. We have finite energy. We have finite capital that can be converted to energy. And then ultimately what mining is you are burning capital in order to signal that you value the thing that you're creating more than you valued that energy, whatever pollution that energy causes, or so it's you are saying that the coin that I'm mining is more valuable than everything else that I'm sacrificing for it.
Yep.
And that demands that we compete down to the smallest possible unit, because it's the only way we can all benefit from it too. Otherwise, what are we even doing? If I go to New Zealand,
you're literally burning cash.
Yes, but it's like we travel the world. Let's say I go to Japan and I've got UN. I don't even know how they say their money name. Let's say I'm in China and I want yen, and but what's the difference there? If I have to go to China and use China's cryptocurrency of choice because that's the one they decided to mine, we're not actually creating something of value until we actually burn it down and strip it away to being the king coin, because there just isn't really a reason for there to be more than one. I think we were saying off air, Digibyte doesn't need any other coin in order for Digibyte to have its own value. Would you agree with that statement?
Without thinking through the ramifications of it, sure, yeah. I'm just going to nod for the time being and see where this is going to go.
Okay, so presumably, Digibyte in theory can be cash for the world. In theory, it could be a smart contract layer for XYZ, everything in the universe. Sure. It could be a smart contract platform that manages business deals, marriages, and birth certificates, and whatever else. Like, Digibyte could be all of those things. Would you agree with that?
Yeah.
And independently, it doesn't need Ethereum or BTC or anything else to exist in order to be effective at doing the stated goals of Digibyte.
Presumably, we would have something similar to the whole like pizza ordering thing, where at some point someone's like, I want 30,000 Digibyte and here's 2 pizzas for it.
Sure.
And that's what would give it value in US dollars or something.
Right, and real stuff. So,
well, I mean, you say real stuff, but at the same time, we can also argue the merits of a non-gold backed fiat currency being real stuff.
There you go.
But yes, yep. Let's not go there.
It's ideas, right? And so Digibyte should be competing to orphan all competitors, especially your competitors that are sharing your algorithms. Like those should be your first target. So right now it's what? It's SHA-256.
Which
Are you
is
still
Bitcoin
doing
BSV, Bitcoin
Yeah.
Cash, Undercoin.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like bring on the big names, right?
Right. Yeah. And I mean, obviously that's the hard one. But what else do you have? Grossel?
Myriad Grostel. So Grostel is 2 rounds of the Grostel algorithm. Myriad Grostel is 1 round of the Grostel algorithm, 1 round of SHA-256. So they're slightly different.
Okay.
But
Gotcha.
yeah, so Myriad Grostel after that. We've got Iscrypt as well, which is the Litecoin algorithm.
Yeah.
We have Quibbit, again, which is the Quibbit coin. It was originally also part of Myriad Coin, but is no longer. They're now using Iscrypt.
Okay.
And finally, Skeen, which is Skeen coin. We're about to replace Myriad Grostel with AutoCrypt, which is one of our own. And that's where it actually gets really interesting because so we've got our 5. We're about to get rid of one of them, but we're going to replace it with another one. This one's our own, but then we're going to have a whole bunch of people that are potentially going to go, that's a cool idea. We'll also use that. And like you say,
Sure.
we're the coins now on the we've flipped the coin, and so now we are effectively going, hang on, we want this hash power to secure our network. Screw you all. We want
Right.
Like, so this is where we can see, obviously, like there's that little bit of animosity potentially from Bitcoin and from Litecoin people and things like that, because we are sucking their, it's not a lot, but we are sucking their hash power out. And so it's going to be like the shoe will be on the other foot now with us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Dogecoin is using multi-shield, correct? Was forked into their code?
Yeah, so they're using DigiShield, which is the original single algorithm version of it. Yes.
Oh, okay. Interesting. So which algo is Doge using then?
They're actually merged. They were originally Iscrypt, same as us, and that was why they were being abused just like us and why Dogecoin almost died.
Yeah.
Until they implemented DigiShield. So they are using Iscrypt still, but it's merge mined with Litecoin. They implemented that in late 2014, I think, maybe early 2015. I don't recall.
Interesting. Maybe can you explain merge mine in 2 sentences for clarity for anybody who doesn't know what the hell we're talking about?
Okay, so if you mine Litecoin, you specifically are mining Litecoin. But if you are merge mining with Dogecoin, you are taking the work that you are also doing for Litecoin and kind of applying that to the Dogecoin blockchain. And that's how you get your blocks, by mining effectively Litecoin and Dogecoin at the same time. And when you find a block for one, it kind of,
Okay. And then what does DigiShield do?
So DigiShield is the dynamic difficulty adjustment. So back in 2014, when we had Litecoin was Iscrypt, Digibyte was just Iscrypt, Dogecoin was just, and there's a couple of others. So we would see a great big mining pool, and the mining pool would arrive, let's say, with 100 hashes per second. And they would all throw this hash power at Digibyte. Digibyte normally has, like, let's say 5 to 10 hashes per second. All of a sudden, the difficulty is going to skyrocket as they mine a whole bunch of blocks really, 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 really quickly. So they'll get, let's say they get like 100 blocks in quick succession, and then they go, okay, cool, difficulty has readjusted. Off we go. We're going to go now and we're going to start mining Dogecoin and rinse and repeat. So what that then does is it leaves the remaining like 5 hashes per second sitting there going, now our difficulty is expecting us to have 20 times that of what we actually have. So that means that where we would previously have a 1-minute block time, it's now a 20-minute block time. But it got so bad that Dogecoin's blocks literally froze for like 48, 72 hours or something crazy until they implemented that. And so, maybe it means that instead of having like, let's say 2 months worth of these blocks at 20 minutes versus the 1 minute it should be, you'll find the block and it will realize, holy damn, it took you 20 minutes to find that. It should have taken you 1. Difficulty comes back down. Everybody carries on.
Yeah. It's very similar actually to what BCH did when they split from BTC. They put in emergency, it may have even been,
funny you should mention that, because that actually was.
Okay.
That's
Okay.
Same for Ethereum. That's what Ethereum are using, is they're loosely based off DigiShield. BCH more directly implemented it, I believe, and they kind of changed a few little bits and pieces, but they're effectively using DigiShield. Because same thing, like they're like, we can't find a block. No one wants to mine on our network. They all want to mine on the main Bitcoin. And so everyone's sitting there going, all right, we've passed that time, and there's no BCH blocks being mined. Where are they?
Absolutely. So sure. So then getting back to it, if we look at Doge, ultimately now, I would argue at least Digibyte should be looking to orphan Dogecoin so it can become more dominant in that.
Yeah.
In that
Well, I
hash
mean,
power,
so
right?
I mean, the interesting thing is aside from being literally just a meme coin that is effectively worthless, like
Yeah.
so they have Scrypt hash power. There is a small amount of hash power that is being merge mined with Litecoin, which could otherwise be used elsewhere, like either specifically just for Litecoin, or it could be used on whatever other. Actually, what else uses it? That's a really good question, right? So maybe we go what to mine and let's have a quick look. What else uses Scrypt?
Yeah. Probably a
I don't
million
know.
coins you've never heard of, but yeah, primarily Litecoin. It probably has 90+% of it.
I think XVG were using Scrypt as well. Let me go calculate. Let's have a quick look. Yeah, okay. So Verge, Litecoin, Einsteinium, Florin Coin, Game Credits, and then we got a bunch that emerge mine like Goldine, Dogecoin, Viacoin, Myriad
Interesting.
Coin. Yeah.
Fascinating.
Oh, today I learned. But that's the thing, right? Like so we are effectively competing. Like we want their hash power to make our network more secure. Otherwise, you run into things like you have the Bitcoin Gold problem, or even the Vertcoin problem, right? Where you can find people that are out there who are willing to go, I have enough hash power that I want to be paid in Bitcoin, which is kind of, again, comes back to your everyone really just wants Bitcoin.
Right.
But I'm willing to rent it out to you at XYZ price, and you can have that hash power for an hour, a day, a month, and you get to mine whatever you want. You can be legitimate with it, or you can be malicious with it. And that was what we saw last year with Bitcoin Gold. I think it was around about May.
Gold got double spent hard, yeah.
Like hard.
Yeah,
It was
Yeah.
So,
well, then same with Vertcoin for what, $300. I think Vertcoin got murdered for a good amount of time for very little money because it was so minority on its algorithm.
Yeah, and so that's the thing is I was actually the same thing happened as well with Ethereum Classic, and that's the thing. So hypothetically, were Ethereum Classic the dominant hash power in their own individual algorithm, the funny thing is that's still not enough.
Right.
Because we also still see especially if you're GPU minded, and we find the likes of, say with Vertcoin, they've got their Lyra 2 REV3 now, you can still rent that on NiceHash. And you rent, actually, I don't know, what was that other website that allows you to talk about Crypto 51, I think it is.
Yeah, I think that's it.
I wonder if they're on there with their new Lyra 3. Oh, yeah, it is. Okay. So there's not enough hash power at the moment to do any kind of rented attack. But the estimated attack cost for 1 hour to get you 1 terahash per second would be about $350. So even though they are the majority hash power in Lyra 2 REV3, that's still not enough. So they need more people to be mining with their other hash, and so that's the thing is it's not just Lyra 2 REV3, but they really need the Lyra 2 REV2 people to stop and also mine on their chain with their algorithm in order for them to actually be secure.
Yeah. Well, and how do you do that? And that's what I mean. So then we look at that and we say, okay, at the very least, then things like Vertcoin, or you mentioned Viacoin and a bunch of other things, like those things are redundant. They don't have any superlatives. There's nothing about them that makes them. There's nothing about them that makes them arguably the coin that should be one. Right. Yeah. Why should that be the best coin? I think there is actually an argument to be made for Digibyte. Again, Digibyte is not my number one pick for such things, but Digibyte is a superlative project. Like it has superlatives that are unique and valuable. So
it's actually, because in that vein, there was what was his name? Shit, he's that not so fast. He's that miner guy who used to like mine coins real early back in the day. He'd mine a buttload of them, sell them off, make a ton of money. Anyway, he was like, why is was it Novogratz was having a go at Litecoin?
Yes.
there's like, it's an unpopular opinion, but if you stop and you think objectively about it and you put on your thinking cap and you go, you know what, there is merit to it. Why do we need what is effectively Bitcoin, but you've changed two values? You've changed the maximum supply, you've changed the block timing. Actually, sorry, so there's three. You've doubled the block size.
Right.
Okay. And like, why do we need, I mean, I guess we could argue it's two now if we're talking about BSV and you guys have 128 meg blocks and they're way smaller. Like that's, but again, like, so why do we need that when they are effectively just the same thing, but with a different hashing algorithm and slightly faster blocks? What's the point? We can then look at, well, what about Grostal coin? What about Skeen coin? Or, you know, like it is literally the same thing with slightly faster blocks, slightly faster. A fraction faster. Like is 4 times really enough for you to go, yes, this is now all of a sudden world banking? It's totally fine. I can't wait 10 minutes for a coffee, but I can wait 2.5 minutes for a coffee after I've gone and paid. Like, no, 2.5 minutes is still unacceptable.
Right. Well, and that's the struggle, is that ultimately, and truly, the problem here with the early adoption phase is first of all, the adoption subsidy. So block rewards are subsidizing mining. And it's supposed to make it profitable for people to secure the network and grow the value of the network during the bootstrapping phase. But instead, people treated it as, it's basically like saying, Josiah, I'm going to give you welfare for 10 years, but make sure you build something great during that period. And instead, you're like, well, I can sell my welfare checks to my neighbors for 8 years, and then the last 2 years I can actually do something with whatever. And so what it's become is it's more profitable to copy and paste code, create a software fork, not a chain split, but just something like Litecoin, for example. Like, okay, copy, paste, change 2 or 3 parameters, we're Litecoin. Now it's got its own evaluation. It's got, you know, all these different superlatives about Litecoin, but all of them are financially based. Like Charlie Lee is brilliant in the sense that he took what is essentially a copy and paste, broke every promise Litecoin was supposed to fulfill, and then dumped his coins that he probably mined at fraction of a penny and dumped them for close to $400 a piece, making himself quietly one of the richest men in the entire cryptosphere, I'm sure. And at the end of it all, we have to look and say, what is that value to anyone other than Charlie? Well, there's investment value in all of it. Every single coin has investment value if you were smart enough or lucky enough, maybe dumb lucky enough, to pick a coin, mine the hell out of it before anybody else did, and then sell it at the peak. And you know, and actually even Digibyte had one of those, you know, 2-week candles that was that, what, 30x or 50x move that happened over the course of a couple of weeks.
That was in 2017. Yeah, that I remember that. Yeah.
And that's the, you know, you look at it, and I remember being just as excited as anybody else, being like, wow, what is this, like, what's going to become of this? But ultimately, that investment value exists in any speculative asset. But if we are going to have any of it, this is actually something I'm going to quote Craig Wright, which got some people, but what I love is that he says that we have to, like, we need to decide, are we going to have one cryptocurrency or are we going to have zero? And I think he's right. In the long term, I don't know. Like, I don't think that there's just going to be an event and everything's going to die and there's just going to be one coin in 2019. Yeah. But these halving events with the block subsidy going down, if we have not created exponential value in between each halving event, and by value I mean velocity of money, use of the blockchain, self-sustaining mined networks that a miner can function on fees of transactions rather than those subsidies, then your chain is gone. And that's every chain. And this is why now we got, you know, I tell everybody, pay attention to Peter Todd, because Peter Todd, for whatever reason, is the guy who seems to be able to float the weird idea first. And then when that weird idea all of a sudden gets merged into Bitcoin Core, it's like, oh, wow. But it always starts with freaking Peter. So, like, he was the very first infinite small block guy that we can never go above 1 megabyte. He was the first guy to talk about, you know, the necessity of SegWit, basically kicking out the small blockers, or the big blockers, rather. And now I've noticed 3 times over the past 2 months, he has talked about the need for either A, eliminating the halvening, or B, merging in a 1% perpetual inflation to BTC, which means no more 21 million cap.
Yeah, I think that's true. Well, he's also the guy behind RBF.
Yes. Again, so every major contentious issue in BTC started with Peter Todd.
Which he's also the one who wrote this is how you abuse RBF scripts so that you can walk into like an ATM, which funnily enough happened.
Right. We did it.
Yeah, we did it. This was the proof of concept, and here we are. We've made it happen. We've done the double spin. So they filtered out, what was it, like several $100,000, like $500,000 or something?
Yeah, it was
out of these Bitcoin ATMs. Now, the interesting thing is that this hit the individuals running the ATMs, as far as my understanding is correct.
Yeah.
It hurt them on an individual basis because they kind of they buy the ATMs or they rent them off of the manufacturer, and then they have to fund them with their own money, and they're effectively like So that hurt a lot of individual. Yeah. So. But yeah, that's exactly it. RBF was his idea. I can understand why it was created. I think it was more trying to put a Band-Aid on something rather than addressing the root cause, which is what you have with the likes of BSV. BSV was like, you know what, this is actually stupid. Why would we go and put a Band-Aid on this great big gaping wound that is hurting everybody and you're bleeding out on the sidewalk there? Why don't we just let's close the wound rather than just putting this tiny little Band-Aid on it, right?
Right. Stitch it up. Cut your losses, amputate the dead thing, and move on.
Yeah.
So
I mean, but there, shit. There was okay. So because you were talking about the halvening.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things, and so I want to kind of ask you what your thoughts are on this, because obviously Digibyte does it slightly differently. We don't have a halvening. Our supply decreases by 1% every month, or every XYZ blocks. I can't remember the exact number. But every month, the supply emission decreases by 1%. What are your thoughts on doing something like that versus having every 2 years the amount halves, and it's this brutal
it depends. It really depends on what the purpose of the network is. And with Bitcoin, the way that Satoshi Nakamoto designed Bitcoin, it was urgent. It was urgent and it was competitive. So the idea is, hey, I'm going to give you this tool that is going to lose its value unless you use it to create business value, which is why I always talk about business, is that the tool shouldn't accrue value because it exists.
Yeah.
I make the example, if I buy all the hammers at Home Depot and throw them in my shed, they shouldn't just increase in value. The thing that makes them increase in value is the need to build things. So it's an external force that should give those hammers value. And it's the same thing with Bitcoin. Just because there's only 21 million Bitcoins doesn't mean they should be worth $1 million a piece. They have to be used for something. And
I guess that's the flip side with gold, because obviously everyone compares it to gold and they'll say, right, gold is valuable. Yes, it's valuable because I can use it in my electronics. Gold on its own is also valuable because it looks pretty, and I can adorn myself with my necklace that has gold, or I can wear a wedding ring. I mean, mine's not gold, but that's not the point. But it has value because of that, because it is pretty, because it is useful. It's a conductor, it's malleable, and you can mold it, and you can.
Right.
Bitcoin is literally numbers on a page or on a computer, effectively. It doesn't look pretty. You can't print it out and wear it. I mean, you can print out different metals and wear different metals, but it inherently itself has no value unless it is being used person to person, like me to you, which is still, in effect, we are conducting business with each other,
right? Or
in business.
Yeah. So, and that's the point, is that Bitcoin is supposed to be urgent. It is supposed to, imagine if you knew your hammers in your shed were going to vaporize or be cut in half at a certain date every couple of years. Well, then I have to plan. Okay, how many houses will I then need for the next 20 years? Because I need to start building them now, or at least plan for how I'm going to build them as the hammers lose their value, et cetera. It requires some kind of economic planning moving forward, or a business plan.
Yeah.
With Digibyte, it sounds like first of all, I like the idea, like the 1% reduction, roughly monthly. But what it does is it lowers the urgency. Like there's not a punctuation date. Like there's not a date in mind to let's say you're a Digibyte Maximalist. There's not a date in mind where it's like, man, I really better have gotten my shit together by this date or I'm in big trouble, right?
Well, that's effectively what 2035 is, when the last coin has been minted.
Sure. Okay.
And that's a lot closer, I suppose, for us, because that's what are we, 16 years away now? Yeah. Compared to 2140, which is now like 2130, give or take, if you're Bitcoin.
Right.
Depending on block timings and things.
Right.
But at the same time, like, so that's, I mean, it's kind of more smooth for us in terms of like the decrease and then coming around versus the goes along, drops, along, drops, along, drops.
Sure.
Of Bitcoin. But that's still, you're right. Like that sense of urgency is still there, but it's a bit like, is it less urgent? I don't know. It's interesting because we've still got, like, we're going to have that emission is going to dry up effectively,
right? No
matter what. It's going to happen sooner for us too.
Well, but not really, because if you look at halvenings, like by 2035, if miners have not figured out a way to completely function on fees by 2035, Bitcoin's dead too.
They're screwed.
Yeah, it's done. Which is why Peter Todd, the balloon man who floats the bad idea first, is now talking about the need for perpetual inflation or eliminating those halvenings altogether. Like, let's just have the supply go up in perpetuity to secure the network, because if they don't, the network will not be secured, period. And I really think, so I don't think this next halvening will be an event. It may be bullish because all the dweebs think it's bullish and how fun it works in crypto. But I think the next one after, so 2024, I think could be very significant. And the reason is that brings us down to 3 and 1/8 Bitcoins, I think.
Yeah, every 10 minutes.
Yeah. And so if the value and the network economics have not spread in such a way where the value has gone up exponentially twice, which from here is not that crazy of a number. It's what, 16, something like $18,000 or something per coin today. Which is fine, but we've seen how the network deals with demand of an $18,000 Bitcoin. It's completely dysfunctional.
We can't even have a $5,000 Bitcoin without it turning to shit.
Right. And that's the thing is we have two sets of network economics that are fighting against each other. And it's the economics of the goal of Bitcoin is to keep it on the smallest possible thumb drive.
Yeah.
Versus we're trying to create world money that can change everything. And then you got the thumb drive guys talking about how, well, half the world shouldn't use Bitcoin anyways. And then you have the other half of the world that like read the white paper or became a Bitcoiner for economic reasons, that looks at it and says, well, then what's the damn point?
Yeah.
And so it's culture versus network economics. And the network economics will dictate the culture unless the culture kills the network economics.
Which they can do if they hold the commit access to the GitHub repo. Correct.
Well, it's not just the commit. It's the commit keys plus their kind of proof of social media. You remember the UASF stuff and their stupid army hats. And a bunch of computer nerds acting like they're tough guys with, they got the hat covering their eyes and like everything's camouflaged. They look like Marines. And it's like, guys, look, you're not tough. You're not that cool. You're computer programmers, and that's fine. But don't act like this is a revolution and you guys
I feel like you're like, fight me IRL, guys. Come at me.
Right. It's just it's just fight me IRL. Yes, that's exactly what it is. So
that came up in a Twitter one time with you, me, and like some other guy or something. And they were like, Kurt's way bigger than you. And I'm like, I know.
Yeah. Oops, I'm dropping stuff.
Yeah.
So, you look at this and it's like you got these various like kind of coup d'etat opportunities. And I really, truly believe that UASF, the way that SegWit was merged into the code, in my opinion, was more akin to like a union strike or a straight up revolt than it was anything else. And the reason for it is that Bitcoin has a very specific governance model, and it's crystal clear. It's in black and white in a very easy to read white paper, like how consensus and rule changes are achieved in Bitcoin. And SegWit, the whole UASF thing, was not done that way. And it is therefore a de facto governance model. It is not the governance model. It's the governance model of an invader. You know, it's just like if the U.S. or China, right? If China invaded the United States and said, okay, we're in charge now, there would be the people who are like, no, I didn't consent to this. You are a usurper, and I don't consent except under the threat of force to your law. And that's where we are today with BTC. And then we had, I mean, that's why Bitcoin Cash forked away. But in my opinion, they did it poorly. I think it was dumb to have replay protection and decide to do like a 2-chain experiment. And I think it did nothing but cause confusion in the market and truly hurt everybody.
Well, I mean, that's also partly Roger Ver's fault for going, no, we're Bitcoin. It's really funny as well, because I see even in some of the comments where I'm talking about Bitcoin and Digibyte and something else, and people are like, no, that's not Bitcoin what you're talking about. I'm like, well, okay, sure. Let's all virtue signal and say that Bitcoin SV is more closer to the white paper, and that this Bitcoin is, we'll call it Bitcoin SegWit 2x or whatever, but it's not 2x, but you know what I mean. But it's still effectively Bitcoin, and Roger was basically like, we're Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And that you're right. Like, that's the thing. So this also comes back to the hash power, because it's also not just hash power, but it's the brand name recognition that's specifically in the Bitcoin space.
Right.
You're all competing. Like, we're not sitting around. We're not all buddies going, yeah, this is great. Everyone, let's sing and dance and have a happy time. You're fighting for the brand name recognition as well as the hash power. So your job's doubly as hard.
It is. Well, and it's the thing. It's because it's a both and. So like Roger was both right and wrong about Bitcoin Cash being Bitcoin. He's right in the sense that Bitcoin, so I always make this point. Bitcoin is 3 things. Bitcoin is a disambiguation. The word is not specific. It's not a proper noun. Bitcoin is not one thing. Bitcoin is the name of the network. It is the name of the protocol. And it is the name of the chain tip that is in compliance with the protocol with the most proof of work and no unbroken chain of digital signatures.
Yeah.
So it's 3 specific things. So the network is the hash power. There is no miner that is not mining at least 2 of those versions of the coin. So almost every miner, there's a couple. So I believe Slush Pool, and there's one other major one that mines only BTC. But every other major pool mines BTC and BCH or BTC and BSV. And so the overwhelming majority of the network that we call Bitcoin is mining 2/3 of the chain tips of Bitcoin.
Yeah.
So these chain tips we call coins. Satoshi was very clear that the tip of the chain is a coin. This is how we define a coin. And right now there's 3: BTC, BCH, and BSV. There's not really another way to put it. And the reason I say this too is, like, let's say we have 100 miners. It means at any given time, there are 100 chain tips, and 99 of them, or I guess 96 of them, get orphaned, and 3 of them remain every 10 minutes.
Yep.
And so that's the point, is that there are 3 out of consensus Bitcoins. And then ultimately the hash power must orphan 2 of them.
Yeah.
And so at that point, there will be a Bitcoin again. But until then, the arguments for there's only one are just plainly wrong. They are functionally wrong. You can have the philosophical argument. So the philosophical argument is obviously compliance with the white paper, back to the Genesis block, no unbroken chain of signatures. And on that, I think BTC clearly fails. BCH is working on failing, and BSV is.
I don't understand the BCH choices. I really don't.
They've eliminated. So one of the very specific things in the white paper is the chronology of transactions. Is that the order that transactions come in should be chronological, and they're changing that. And It means they're very specifically eliminating a clear paragraph of the Bitcoin white paper and moving away from Bitcoin.
Which is funny because Roger Ver was always like, this is the white paper, read it in the white paper. It says peer-to-peer electronic cash. But just don't read section 3, paragraph 2, because I don't agree with that one. But you must agree with the title, because the title is the key.
Well, and now they've become maximalists of the title. The title is now, like, if you talk to Bitcoin cashers today, it's, well, we're just going to become peer-to-peer digital cash, and it's going to be the greatest thing ever, and it doesn't matter how we get there. And it's like, well, okay. And again, I make the argument to everybody, well, if you're trying to be peer-to-peer digital cash and be all these things, like, just move to Digibyte. They do it better. Like, it's just better. So why would you bother with Avalanche and CTOR and all these different things that you're going to merge into the code and change Bitcoin while retaining the Bitcoin name? It's disingenuous, and it's unhelpful. And it's also, it makes it that much more ego-based too, because how much ability would it take for somebody like Roger Ver to say Digibyte is a better version of peer-to-peer cash than Bitcoin?
Well, the funny thing is he's talked in the past and he's gone, if somebody can show me something that does what Bitcoin does, but it does it better, I will advocate that. And so I wrote to him and I was like, name one thing that Digibyte does that's worse. One thing. Name one thing. And so I was kind of like, well, I even took his, like, this is what makes Bitcoin graph. And
I remember you shared that, yeah.
And I was like, look, we're right up there, man. Like,
yeah.
It doesn't matter if you want to split the 100%, or if you want to just weight everything, we'll still beat Bitcoin Cash in that if we are a peer-to-peer cash only. Right.
Well, and now they've got their simple ledger protocol, their tokenization thing, and now the war between are we just peer-to-peer cash, or are we also this awesome tokenization platform? But
right. So actually, this brings out something really good, because I wanted to ask you about this, because you've been around for a while and you're one of the few people who still remembers this kind of thing back from pre-2014. Because let's be honest, a lot of people have only been around for about 18 months. Most people came in the last big bull run. Most people, give or take. I mean, there are still obviously people that were around, such as you and I, beforehand. So back in the day, and you're very well aware of this, Vitalik was a huge contributor of it was mostly Python, wasn't it?
I believe he still has the biggest Bitcoin Python library. I believe he still holds the record for the most Python commits that are used in Bitcoin.
Right.
But so prolific developer of Bitcoin.
The dude knows some shit, basically.
Yeah.
He decided, for whatever reason, that because of, I think this is also potentially why the BSV community are looking at bringing in a bunch more opcodes. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah. Opened them up significantly. We have the largest opcode. I mean, to the point where we can upload video in OpReturn to the blockchain.
Yep.
You can even stream out of the mempool with it. It's intense. So yes, OpReturn primarily is a coding layer that you can put JavaScript, you can put HTML, you can put CSS up into it, and whatever, play video games right off the blockchain, etc.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but so basically there was Mastercoin and there was the Colored Coin protocol, and then they basically took that and they became Ethereum effectively from ground up.
Basically.
And like very cut down.
Yes. Yeah, that is the very shortest version of that story, yes. But yes, the idea is that Bitcoin is not Turing complete at a like mining and propagation level, which is technically true. But if you include script and tokenization options, it is Turing complete, which allows for smart contracts, basically. Ethereum took it a very different direction to make it Turing complete at a network propagation level.
From the ground up completely.
Yes. So like every level of it is Turing complete, but it's still, the code is still mostly Bitcoin code. It's just been changed in order to specifically execute smart contracts, but it does it in such a way that it is really inefficient, unfortunately. So Ethereum has its own massive scaling problem and need for major protocol overhauls as well. But yes, Ethereum exists because the core development team shut off, in fact, most opcodes, and then they severely limited many of the other ones by size, because again, the goal of Bitcoin Core was to keep Bitcoin on the smallest possible thumb drive. And since that was the goal, they see everything as frivolous except for their base UTXO set.
Right. Like, so up return is 80 bytes or something, I think.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah. And so they're all limited. Right. So anyway, I was going somewhere with this. But so yeah, so with Ethereum, like what's their block timing, I think is about 17 seconds, give or take, but I don't remember what their
something like that, yeah,
transaction capacity is. That I don't remember. I remember they also ran into problems last bull run and with CryptoKitties and things, just it melted.
Yes. Yeah, they were $5 a transaction on Ethereum and stuff for a good while.
What is their Ethereum block capacity? I want to know. So anyway, so I used to know this off the top of my head. I could spit these numbers out so quickly, but I like the hard part is I really just don't give a shit about Ethereum anymore.
Yeah, same.
So if we were to take, like, let's say that kind of that tokenization, which is effectively what Ethereum has become known for in the smart contracts, we've basically what we're doing is we're taking with Digibyte, and this is my nice segue, we're taking the colored coins protocol, we're modifying it a bit, we're implementing it both into a desktop as well as onto our mobile wallets, because I think that's vastly underappreciated at the moment is the power and the portability of mobile. And so that's something that we are also working on. Mm-hmm. And there's even been rumors that down the line we could potentially be compatible with the Ethereum smart contracts, so you could basically just port them across to the Digibyte network.
So like ERC20 could bounce between networks then?
Potentially. How accurate that is or how much work is going to be involved or if that will even eventuate down the line, I'm not a developer.
Yeah.
But who knows? So I mean, it could be kind of cool. And so I guess like for us, this is where we're kind of also going. This comes back to what you were talking about, like a value proposition, and in terms of having that utility and things that people want to use and do on a daily basis. And so with this, the idea being that you can use all of these assets on the blockchain. So this is something that we're going to be pinning a lot of our future on, not just the whole currency aspect, but we've kind of got our eggs in multiple baskets. We're diversifying our asset portfolio.
Wonderful.
Yes. We're not all in on just one thing. So, but I mean, it's going to be one of the things, I'm really quite excited about it. And the mind boggles when you start thinking about things that you could put on a blockchain. Now, obviously, we don't need everything on a blockchain. That's pointless. And we don't need 8,000 blockchains. How many of them are actually just tokens in and of themselves? I don't know. But I mean, that's the thing is like, do we actually need all of these different blockchains or, yeah. But so this is something that we're actually specifically doing, and I thought I would kind of get your 2 cents on it because we've talked a little bit about in the past Mastercoin very briefly. You obviously know a little bit of history about colored coins and things, and they've now up and dried up and disappeared predominantly, again, because of the slower nature, the smaller blocks, the limitations there and things like that. What's your kind of 2 cents on that?
So colored coins, I think colored coins was the first kind of tokenization concept that came to Bitcoin. It was something that I was really excited about initially, and it kind of answers that adoption question of like, why would I use a fluctuating currency as my base currency? If I spend my Bitcoin, it's going to be worth $1 million, and I bought a pizza with it 2 years ago, which is stupid. But if you use it to secure a fiat currency, for example, which actually happens in BTC's Omni layer. That's what Tether is.
That's what Tether's from. Yeah,
is tokenization on Bitcoin's Omni layer. But colored coins was existed to tokenize all kinds of things. So it can be anything from video game assets, or if me and you are playing some World of Warcraft or whatever, and we want to trade, like that trade can be facilitated through a colored coin, a tokenized asset. But the big one was going to be, create tokenized fiat. So nations, rather than being able to inflate the value of their currency arbitrarily, like, for example, we don't know how many US dollars are in circulation, that would be auditable if they were colored coins. Well, that idea didn't really get into any momentum before kind of Core jumped in and shut off all the codes that would have made that possible. They were resurrected even by name. Colored coins came back in Bitcoin Cash for a bit, or they were attempting to. It was there. It was something you could play with. And I'm actually friends with the guy that created it too. But he's the guy who's operating Shark Pool now, so he would not be friendly about talking to somebody else about the idea. But he helped put it back together, and then the hash war happened, and we haven't seen a resurrection of colored coins by name back on BSV. But BSV has moved to new. So now there's two competing protocols in Bitcoin. You have Simple Ledger Protocol on Bitcoin Cash, and then you have Tokenized is the primary one over on BSV. And I forget the name of the other one, but Attila Aros is a developer on BSV that has his own tokenization protocol as well. So there are competing tokenization platforms, but they're really, really underutilized, and it's because there's no adoption. The adoption, like, you need hyper Bitcoinization before the tokenization aspect makes any sense. But well, at least in function, like, if nobody accepts Digibyte, then how many fewer people are going to accept a token on Digibyte, right?
Yeah.
So, but I was we did an interview earlier this week with David Case, who's the creator of Crypto Fights. And it's a turn-based game where the weapons are non-fungible, which means you own a battle axe and it's your battle axe. You can sell it. It has a traceable history. It can have its own provenance as the battle axe that won some famous battle 100 years ago. And therefore it can have like antiquities value in the future. But you need non-fungible asset protocol, and that exists on BSV. And it's being tested, it's being worked on. Obviously, there's lots of new ideas because BSV is only 4 or 5 months out the gate from being completely separated from all the other BS.
Yeah.
But yeah, tokenization, colored coins, and tokenization, I think, are the most important aspect of really what any blockchain could do, because it can be an underlying layer for simple stuff. Yeah, buying coffee, for example, I think is the most obvious thing that you can do with your cryptocurrency. But the really cool stuff, the stuff that, you can automate factories, and you can have Internet of Things, you can have all these different things all happen in a tokenization layer. And colored coins is one way to do that. And that's to basically burn, not even burn, you're just locking up some micro UTXO and then breaking it into as many as you want. So I'm fairly certain I could take a Satoshi and break that Satoshi into 1 million pieces and then give a value to each. For example, if I'm tokenizing fiat, I could say each one of those pieces is worth a penny or $1 or whatever, and then go from there. So it allows you to create those sort of sub-Satoshi units and other, really cool features like that. So that's my understanding of tokenization. Again, I'm not a programmer. I like to think of myself as a translator more than anything.
Yeah. Well, so that was one of the things, actually, because I was doing this with Jared just yesterday, and he created, I think, what did he call them? I think he called them like tater tots or something funny. And he's like, look, I'm going to send you, like, I've gone and just printed like 1 trillion tater tots, and I'm going to send you 25 billion of them or something. Nice. And so this is all happening just on our testnet at the moment, because we've been having a whole lot of fun with development and getting it up and going and stuff like that. But
sure.
Yeah, so the theory is you could even, it's really quite interesting because there's a property in the initial ASIC creation, and you can flag it and basically go, this is either locked or unlocked. So if it's unlocked, you can go and you can print more of these assets. But if it's locked, then forever there is only, say, for example, 21 million of these particular tokens. But if it's unlocked, you can still go and reprint more, which I'm presuming is what they're roughly doing with Tether. But it is auditable, like you say, every step of the way, because you can view it and it's on the blockchain and you can have a look and you can go, yep, they started with them at this time, this many, they printed more, and you can
Right.
work your way down. Yeah, I mean, so that's something that I'm certainly excited about. You've obviously got to have a little bit. The first thing that happens when you fire up your wallet is it goes, cool, here's your wallet, here's your address, credit it.
Right.
You've got to put some money in. You've got to send that Digibyte as you use it. So it's going to be interesting to see how that also subsequently, like you've mentioned, gives the network the value, because people are
Right.
using it, they want it, they've got to have it.
Sure. Well, and it has to be ubiquitous to matter. Like, I have my marriage date hashed to the blockchain, but if the Bitcoin blockchain ceases to exist, then it's gone. So it's like, you kind of need that. You have to have that ultimate absolute dominance first, in my opinion, for the tokenization of things to really work. Outside of, Tether makes sense because most people are trading. So like that fulfills the need that exists today. But I think other than that, the other tokenization really has just been proof of concept stuff, which is cool, but it's not ultimately, my life hasn't been changed by it. I don't know that anybody else's has either.
No, exactly. And I mean, so the interesting thing is I guess, like you're talking about with your marriage certificate being hashed into the blockchain, it would be interesting to see what happens if one day we take if the Bitcoin core blockchain ends up, like you say, being orphaned off, and Bitcoin SV is still left, and where your hash ends up. Was that previously I'm presuming it was on the BSV blockchain?
No, I hashed it. Let's see, when did I get married? 2015. Yeah, no, I hashed it to BTC, so it's still there. It's no
matter what, you're good. You're married still,
right? It's there, right? But if I were to, for example, if I were to have hashed something to BCH and BCH ends up being orphaned, then it's not in BTC, but it would be on BSV. So,
not if you did it today, though, it would be the interesting thing, I guess.
Correct. If I did it on BSV today, it's obviously not on BTC or BCH.
Yeah, and so it's kind of interesting, because I suppose on like this, if you look at it with a rather extremist viewpoint, going like we're all the way back now where we were at the beginning, the BCH chain is effectively somebody not selfishly mining, but they're effectively attempting a 51% attack with their own network proposition in the meantime. Sure. On the BTC and BSV chain, right? Like so. Right. I mean, it's interesting to think what would happen if one day they then go, right, we're now going to try and effectively remerge. Or it gets orphaned off and dies.
Yeah, at this point, as far as I'm aware, the only option is to orphan.
Yeah, I don't think they're any longer compatible.
No. Well, I mean, there's no way to merge that much information. So they're effectively split and permanently. And unless again, there are some theoretical guys out there that'll tell you all kinds of wacky stuff. But as far as I'm aware, yes, it's done and over. The three versions of Bitcoin are separate permanently. But it's the same as any other, like I said about the 100 miners. If somebody had a tokenized asset,
it is still part of, like, you could incorporate that. It could be used as part of the other BTC, because you haven't done anything that effectively breaks the rules on the other chain. The other chain's broken the rules on your chain, but you haven't done that to them.
But merging them, I don't know how they could be merged. Well, yeah, more opcodes, larger block size. BSV still has the emergency difficulty adjustment as well, the Digi Shield, and then
so you're right, they are actually just three separate then.
Yeah, they're just three separate, and ultimately, BSV wants to return to the basic, the nature of the protocol of original Bitcoin, but it doesn't matter because you can't remerge transactions. Like, they are separate UTXO sets. Yeah. And orphaning really looks like, it's a nightmare for whoever loses, right? I mean, your UTXO set completely loses value. The 0 day on that is like, especially if and when BTC, ceases to be mined, which, I don't know what that looks like or when that happens, but there's talk of, some catastrophic problem with SegWit and everything else. And, again, that's the computer science stuff that's way over my head. But you know,
it was interesting though, because you talked about the like holding ups to a bull run, and how even in like the $5,000 rise, which was, what was it, like 20% in an hour or two?
Yeah.
All of a sudden, we're seeing like there is pending 60,000 transaction.
Yeah.
Excuse me. And I went back because I was curious. So I went back and I had a look at December 2017.
Yeah.
And there was about 370 million worth of transaction fees alone in like pending in Bitcoin at that time.
Yep.
But I also then wonder, like, so because it's interesting. There are definitely the two different sides to it's kind of the let's sell less or let's transact less, but with a higher fee, or let's transact more with a lower fee and get the volume and quantity of scale. I don't think that any one is particularly right versus wrong, but I think that if we are going for, I hate saying the word mass adoption, I think if we're going for worldwide use as a currency with people being able to use it, like you say, we're not going, the people in Venezuela are too poor. No, you're not allowed to use Bitcoin. Then, yeah, that's I feel like we need the whole lot more at cheaper value.
Sure.
What I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and that's the thing. So you're right that it doesn't matter today. The either or is irrelevant in today's market. In a decade, it's going to be completely different. In a decade, we'll have gone through 2 or 3 more halvenings, and BTC will be unable, because still the miners today are living primarily off the block reward.
It makes up the vast majority of it.
Yes. BSV today is often more profitable to mine than BTC, even though the coin is $65 and or whatever it is today.
Is that because of the relative hash power though? So like I can obviously imagine that if we were to take like even one large pool, like let's say we take all of Antpool and throw it at it, it's not going to be profitable for them. But I wonder why is it consistently, because that's one of the things that I've noticed as well, is that it's consistently more profitable for you to be mining with your SHA-256 power on BSV. Is this because people are like, you know what, I can't actually bother trading it for something, or
The reason is, well, it's a couple things. The primary thing is that I don't know if you've looked at the block size on the mainnet regularly on BSV, but it's quite common to have 50 plus megabyte blocks. And it's funny because, first of all,
that was up and down so much. Like I had a look at that, right?
Yes. Well, the reason is because given the size of the op return, which I think is 200 kilobytes now, compared to on BTC, it's like
80 bytes.
Yes, 80 bytes, right? Yeah. So it's like 500 times more op return size. Well, given the size of that op return, you can upload, like I said, video, pictures, and whatever. And people will say that that's arbitrary or like a poor use of the blockchain. However, what it's doing is it's creating miner fees that allow the miners to secure the network of an 80, I think it's an $80 coin today, but of an $80 coin, even when the what do you call it? The block reward is the same in coins that it is on either chain or on any of the 3 chains. And the reason it's more profitable on BSV is because people are using the chain for whatever they want to use it for. And they are paying fees massively to do it. So like if I want to upload a photo to Bitstagram or some other thing on the BSV blockchain, I should expect it to cost between 3 and 7 cents as a rule. And for me, that's nothing. But when 100,000 people want to be throwing up photos and doing whatever and paying miners to do something for them on the blockchain, well, the miners are happy to do it. So they're gobbling up network fees. And this is only with 128 megabyte blocks. Well, the goal is to have 512 megabyte blocks by July and then to be over a gig by 2020. So think about how many fees worth of op return data that you can throw up into the blockchain at that point. I mean, it's going to very quickly become a much more profitable chain to mine on, which means that hash power will move to it slowly because, like you said, if Antpool were to just turn a switch, yes, the difficulty adjustment would wig out and everyone would lose money for some amount of time. But at the same time, like we just saw some new pool in Japan has switched a ton of its BTC hash power. They're called K pool. And they started about 2 weeks ago, just a little bit of hash power coming into the BSV chain. I'm like, who is this? And then it's growing and growing. They're the third largest miner on the chain now. And they
a couple weeks.
Yeah, just a couple of weeks. And they just keep upping it so they don't screw up the difficulty adjustment. But they're jumping over there to be like, why wouldn't I be mining this more profitable coin? It's easier to mine. The difficulty is way lower and it's more profitable. So, and it's, long term, maybe I want to be accumulating BSV if I'm a miner, because BTC is trying to eliminate the halvening and potentially kill itself off. I mean, that's a major point of contention there. And so as a miner, if I'm looking long term, I'm looking at the coin that wants to incentivize me to work. I mean, I would way rather mine a 10 gigabyte block that was full of all kinds of crazy shit rather than being stuck mining a 1 megabyte block that's got, whatever, some
Yeah, it's certainly it's an interesting one, I guess, because you've got, obviously, over time, you have the greater hash power. If you are pointing your hash power at, like, the greater hash power sitting on BTC, and you're less likely to find the block, but when you do find the block, you're more likely to have the higher block rewards, which have a higher USD value. But if you were throwing that at BSV instead, you're more likely to find blocks on a more regular basis, and they're more likely to have more fees from the transactions and things. So it's an interesting proposition to kind of see played out there.
Yeah, it sure is.
One of the things that we often get asked, I suppose, with Digibyte is, what is the best pool for me to mine on? And I always correct people and I'll say, look, it's the wrong question. You don't want to be throwing your hash power at the one that already has the most hash power. But at the same time, you want to get yourself some average amounts of rewards that even out, that spread out across the day. Provided you're finding enough blocks, you're still going to be a relatively zero sum at the same sort of value of Digibyte at the end of the day. But yeah, it's what I would rather see, though, I guess, is people mining like spread more and getting more from the fees on a personal level.
Right. Well, because I mean, you have to, right? I mean, what are the miners going to look like in 2035 when there's no more block reward on Digibyte? They have to have figured out a way to be profitable using only fees. And so that's crucial. It's a crucial part of the economic model. And truly, I think it's crystal clear reading everything Satoshi Nakamoto ever wrote that was the nature of how he saw Bitcoin scaling, is that the block reward goes away, and at a certain point, the network must be secured by fees. But those fees have to be in balance with usability of the network itself, because if people are incentivized to not transact on the network, then there is no fee for the miners to mine. So,
and I guess, so the thing is for us, our curve is very, very gradual. And so what I'll see, there's kind of as we get closer and closer to 2035, there's kind of going to be a point where it's like, okay, you are now making more from this particular block in transaction fees than you are from the original block rewards. And then it might go up and down and up and down and up and down over the course of a few weeks, months, even a year or two, depending on how much usage the network is getting and what the fees are and what the blocks are, block reward is at that time. But I feel like that's about to be a lot more sharper for Bitcoin and BSV as you have those halvening events. So I think at the end of the day, though, everybody's got to have that value proposition. And especially as we're seeing with some of these older blockchains like BTC, BSV, even Digibyte now that is 5 years old, we don't just have that initial hype from the, hey, we've launched, like you get with these other particular new tokens and things like that. Have you seen that thing that's doing the round on Twitter and the likes, where it is a case of people in some Asian country, and they've got 2 rows of computers and everyone's sitting down, and the guy goes, all right, buy, and everyone's clicking the button on Binance, trying to refresh to get in and buy their latest ICO and stuff, and there's cheers up. So we don't have that because we haven't just launched. We don't have that kind of oh, this is something new, potential pump and dump sort of. That's really what it is the potential for a pump and dump.
Right. Absolutely.
And so we've got to have that genuine value proposition, And obviously BSV is in the same sort of camp as us because you don't have any particular one central company that controls it. Although, I mean, obviously people argue a bit about CSW sort of thing, but at the same time, it's pretty much in the same space as us, where there's no one company that goes, this is how it's happening and we're doing it. And I mean, you sort of do, but you sort of don't at the same time. But it's, you know what I mean? Like, so you've got to go out, you yourself have got to go out and advertise and market it and tell people and explain to people and show them. And it is that community driven kind of movement.
Right. Well, and that's I mean, it's a double-edged sword, right? Because you have exactly that, where some new chain can come along and they have their ICO and their big pump and everybody's excited. But that's worthless. Like, it doesn't really add value to anything. Like, Digibyte would not be made better, and neither would BSV by going up 10x and then dropping 90% back and then like, it's just a nightmare. It just makes most people actually hate it because most people will innately have bought the green candle and then they're underwater and like, wow, this sucks. So like, I'm glad to have, first of all, a very stable price across the board. With BSV too, but
that happens all like, so people actually look back at 2017 and they hammer Digibyte as a project because of the things that it was like the perfect storm. There was a meme contest going on, there was the Minecraft and Digibyte server, and then there was the City Take for Integrity challenge. And so what you saw was just this huge spike. Right. And we ended up briefly in the top 10 on CoinMarketCap.
Right.
And it was through no fault specifically of our own. The only thing that we were really doing at the time was the City Tech for Integrity challenge. But these other two things, which were both community driven, were what was also helping drive that kind of a hype and that excitement and things.
Right.
And people got burned from it. And like you say, people are like, that's shit, that's a scam because that happened and it was an exit. Well, no, it wasn't an exit. Like, literally, Jared was there giving talk at the Citibank.
Sure.
But I think like one of the things was that, I mean, potentially we could have done a better job as a project to quash the authenticity of some of those things, specifically around like the Minecraft Digibyte server, and correct that misinformation. But if people want to run a meme contest, you can't. If I want to run a meme contest for BSV today, you can't stop me.
Right.
I mean, Craig Wright will block me. I think I'm already blocked. But aside from that, like, you can't do shit to stop me. I'll run a meme contest for BSV, and that's good for the awareness of the blockchain for the project and things like that, right? But
yeah, absolutely.
I mean, it is definitely interesting because you're right. So that big pump and then the dip is terrible news for most people, except for the people who somehow managed to sell the top, presumably like traders and things like that. But even then, it's always hard to call the exact top or the exact bottom. And people literally just get burned. And that's why I'm very against those kind of things myself. And that's why people have seen me speaking out against token pay. And even like Charlie, he should know better and should be calling this scam out.
Yeah. Well, and I should say, like, you know, I truly believe that probably 99% of the entire crypto sphere are purposeful, dishonest shitcoiners. And
yeah,
you know, I don't want to be a dick about it, but I mean, very specifically, I mean, there's all of these cartoon anons all over Twitter and Reddit, and you got troll armies. You have the XRP troll army that we've seen now evidence that they're like 99% paid bots and all kinds of things. It's like all this crap. And I should say too, that when I look at these communities, like, I very much intend to compete as a Bitcoiner to orphan everybody except for my version of Bitcoin that I think has the most value. However, I take people like you seriously at your word that, like, you are, let me think of the right way to phrase this, that you are honest and that you believe that Digibyte is the most valuable thing long-term for people to have in their lives. Otherwise, I don't think you'd be involved.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I suppose both on the personal level, we've gotten to know each other enough that you could potentially presume that, but at the same time, it's like, I'm not going to begrudge you for going, you guys have hash power that should be pointed at the BSV network because we want BSV to be the most secure. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And so I think that's, again, kind of like the same sort of deal. Like, it's It's funny because I see people often are like, yeah, you've got to sing Kumbaya, but we don't, and that's okay. So there is nothing wrong with you saying, you know what, you have SHA-256 hash power that we want.
Right.
Cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Period.
Like that's actually like okay, cool. That's the discussion over. Like, because that's actually okay to kind of have that perspective. And I think a lot of people specifically get very wound up and very tense because it's money and they've put money into it and they don't want to lose money and they don't want to see their chain orphaned off. But at the same time, why kick the can down the road? Why participate in what is effectively a Ponzi scheme?
Right.
You have to get other people on board to your particular, like if you are literally just running one hashing algorithm that you're Bitcoin with a different hashing algorithm.
Right.
You effectively, you offer no value in my mind.
Zero. And in fact, you're sucking value away from something that would otherwise have it.
And you are effectively going to hurt people. Now, is this a scam in itself? No, not specifically. I'm definitely not going to go that far. There are certain other things that I would definitely classify as a scam, which are completely separate. But this in and of itself is simply just, like you say, you are sucking that value, which could be going into a chain. I kind of, so I've long kind of held the opinion, and the further down the rabbit hole we go with cryptocurrencies and things like that, it was probably around about 12 months ago that I realized that I held this opinion, was that we only actually need like half a dozen blockchains. We don't need a billion of them. Like I could very well see us getting by just fine with like 5 or 6 of them. And all of these other little ones can just fall by the wayside. Like we don't, what value do they offer that differs from Bitcoin enough, or BSV obviously, enough that we need to specifically keep them around? Like what is the point of being slightly faster or having just a different hashing algorithm? I don't think there is one. Yeah, is it a great experiment? Sure, congratulations, you just coded up a hashing algorithm.
Sure.
Whoopee! Like
yeah, sure, that's fun.
It is literally greed, and you're basically pumping the bags of the person who originally created it, who's probably pre-mined it, or if they haven't pre-mined it, then they're doing the whole, we're getting in on the early mining, so we get early mining rewards while the difficulty is low, and then when the value goes up and hopefully people are wanting to buy in on our project, we can dump all over everybody at the all-time high of 2017.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Right? I mean,
that's the game. And that's what I mean. So like when I also say it all the time, and it's funny because I have people in BSV that want to criticize me and call me a shitcoiner for it, but I say too that like I don't want to win because everyone sucked. Like I want coins like Digibyte, Monero, or Dash. Like I want them to have good marketing and clever mining and clever development, and really good ideas and merchant adoption and all these things, because I want to beat the best. It's like being, the heavyweight champion in the UFC, but like I beat some schlub for it, like that's
it's not
right. And it's like, that's not exciting.
To it. If you're like, I knocked him out on one hit and it was over. He's half my size.
I think a good example is Ronda Rousey. Like she destroyed everybody, but they weren't good competitors. And when she finally went up against another world-class athlete, she finally had a fight, and then she got demolished. And then it was, and then she came back again. It was like, okay, maybe that was a fluke. I'm a great competitor. And she got wrecked even worse. And the reason
it was entertaining.
Sucked. Well, sure, it was fun to watch, but at the same time, like you look at it and it's upsetting because in her own mind, she was winning because she was a great competitor. And she wasn't. She was winning because she had a tool set that nobody else had learned yet. And that's not how you want to.
An adult basically going up and going, you know what? Like I think, who was that comedian guy? And he basically said it. I forget his name. And he was like, look, it's not something that I'm proud of, but if you put me in a room against like 50 little kids, I'll beat the shit out of all of them. They've got nothing on me. They can't hold
CK.
Yeah, exactly. He's like, I'll fight them all day. They got nothing. They can't beat me. I'm bigger than they are. And that's the same sort of thing. It's like, I mean, yeah, great. Sure, you can beat out all these little shit coins, but unless you're actually going up like head to head against like the best of the best, then what is there any, like, would he feel good about it? No, he said it. Louis CK said in his own like thing, he's like, I wouldn't feel proud of it, but the fact of the matter is that you know, if you put my kids against me, I'll beat them every time because I'm bigger than they are.
Right. And
Sort
that's
of
the
thing
thing.
I feel
We
is,
all, well, and it is, it's, we get better. Like every major coin, every coin that is trying to compete, just like every miner that is trying to compete on the same network, is made better by having better competitors. And that's the, like, it's very simple free market capitalism. And if anybody's interested in reading like Adam Smith and talking about the very fundamental basics of free market economics, that's what it is that good competitors are incentivized to compete against other good competitors, which creates more and more value exponentially for the market itself. And who benefits? Everybody. And we only don't benefit if there's some arbitrary control on the market. And this is what we've seen in places like the Soviet Union, for example, where it's like, no, we're not going to let the market play out. We're the intelligentsia. We are going to decide who gets what because we know better than the market itself. And then you got 100 million people starved to death over a generation or two.
yeah, it was crazy.
And, but you still get the intelligentsia doing the exact same thing. We today have the Vitalik Buterins of the world talking about exactly that. Like there was criticism at is it Diconomy is going on right now? I forget which conference it is, but there's a bunch of people at it.
No, that's not now. It is Diconomy, I think.
I think it's Diconomy is going on right now. And Vitalik Buterin posted on Twitter yesterday and said, there's 5 BSV people up on a panel. Like, what a joke. I can't believe that we're wasting time giving them, and I'm looking back and saying, look, like this is what the fiat economy is saying about all of us. First of all, is that none of us should have a voice. And then now you're in a position that there's one group that is willing to fundamentally disagree with the base narrative of crypto kumbaya. And then the crypto kumbaya crowd, which in my opinion is personified by Vitalik Buterin, is is out there criticizing. And then Andreas Antonopoulos jumps in and is like, oh yeah, what a joke. This is so, And it's like what are you guys afraid of? Like, BSV is so not threatening to you, then why are you all crying on the internet that we exist? And
I would love to see somebody actually come along and sit down and actually have a good, valuable, and genuine discussion. So there was something that we had a little while ago, and Jared taken me along to a crypto conference of some description. And it was super funny because there was a panel, I think there was about 7 of them. So he was up there and Richard Hart was up there for his Bitcoin Hicks. And there was there were people from all different, someone representing Zcash, I think, someone representing something else. And they get them up on this panel. And it was originally supposed to be let's have at it. Let's disagree on some stuff and let's get some really good, let's hash out why doing this is stupid. And why doing this is the right thing. And they were all up there and they were all like, oh yeah, we're buddy buds. This is great. Everybody look at us up on stage. We're great friends. And then Richard turns around and he's like, no, fuck all of you. We're not here. Like what you're doing is stupid and what you're doing is stupid. And he calls out. And I would like to see more of that. I don't think people need to be afraid of it, specifically when they're seeing that as a spectator, which we often see happening, is that people will see 2 people potentially going at it. Now, this is specifically what allowed BitConnect to thrive for so long, was because people were like, no, I've put money into this and I've got money out of it, therefore it is not a scam. It is still a scam. It is still a Ponzi scheme. And yes, it all came crashing down and people got hurt and cryptocurrency as a whole got a bad name. And I don't personally want that. I want the valid and the genuine projects that offers something that is genuinely different, that is not just a slight tweaking of the Bitcoin protocol itself. I want to see those projects rise to the top. And I want to see them fight everyone along the way for the hash power, for the marketing, for the mindset of people and things like that. And I think then we will truly see, like you mentioned, those other projects will get orphaned off. And I think we need to be aware that although we are only at the 0.1% of the entire world actually getting involved, those 0.1% need to be okay with the fact that if you go and pick a project, it might not be around 10 years from now. And for too long, we've kind of gone, no, we'll prop up the shitty little ones. Maybe instead of Dogecoin being merge mined with Litecoin, it just needed to die off.
Right.
What value does it hold by being propped up when that value could be going to Litecoin itself?
Right.
Or it could be going to Bitcoin or Digibyte or BSV or Vertical. It could be going anywhere else though. So
yeah. Well, that's the thing. And I truly think too, if you have a unique idea, it would make the most sense for the main chain to have the ability to tokenize that idea and be a side chain or a tokenization of the concept. Like there's not really a reason not to be a side chain of a major chain and further secure the network. Like there's not a reason to compete after a certain point either. I mean, it's fascinating to see like the economics kind of explode from one, like Bitcoin was clearly king until what, 2015, 2016 was like 95% of the market. We've seen it now flex down to being about 50%.
It's right on 50 right now. Yeah.
Yeah. And you know, especially considering the fracture of BCH and BSV off of it and everything else. And then, you know, now we're in this place where it's very unclear. I don't even know what to tell people when they ask me for my opinion. And I was that guy who was, you know, very confident until really until 2017. But I'm curious if you want to transition to talk about FPGA versus ASIC, because it was something that we had discussed, or is it something that maybe we should think for another show, or what do you think?
Okay. Because you mentioned this before as well, specifically about with an ASIC, you are effectively the most efficient way of mining.
Sure.
Now, I think a lot of this is potentially going to come down to us specifically on Digibyte having multiple algorithms and being able to experiment a little bit more with this kind of thing. But with an FPGA, what we're doing is we are saying no to ASICs.
Okay.
Because they must be reprogrammed every 10 days.
The
FPGA must be reprogrammed every 10 dams.
Okay.
You can do that automatically and you can do it in advance, and that's kind of what we see happen. But you still must you can't reprogram it in advance. You can get everything prepared and ready to reprogram in advance.
Right.
Now, in theory, you could do this with an ASIC. You could make an ASIC and then you could have certain parts of it that you are able to reprogram every 10 days. But why would you bother? Because you're then effectively just an FPGA, not an ASIC. So this is kind of interesting for us because we've said no to ASICs on that aspect, but at the same time, we're also very well aware of the security. Like we are the dominant hash power right now in 3 different algorithms. And so we're aware of the security that provides. We're going to be getting rid of one of them. We're ditching Myriad Grostal. We're going to be replacing it with Autocrypt. And it is going to be just FPGAs. Now, the difference with FPGAs as well versus ASICs is, have you bought an ASIC yourself?
I gotta think about it. I did with a group in 2014.
Right. Okay.
So kind of, yeah.
Yes. Perfect. Now, why did you buy it with a group?
Well, I'm not that technical, first of all.
Right.
So I was the idea guy. I wanted to get involved in mining, and I hooked up with a guy who was an IT and networking expert, and then another guy who was a friend of mine, and we were going to get into it as a group and form like a little LLC or LP or something. And so we bought some, like we were kind of in the testing zone, and then basically just decided to not do it and had some business problems. But yes, in short, I have kind of bought an ASIC in the past. Yeah.
Okay, so this is interesting because that wasn't quite the answer that I was expecting, which is fascinating, but it's still relevant nonetheless because there is the technical aspect of running an ASIC.
Yeah.
It's not straightforward. You get this little box and you're like, cool, now what do I do?
Right. Plug in, press go.
Yeah, well, I mean, you plug it in, but then what? Like, it'll sit there and it'll mine for the vendor or something, I think, if you don't configure it, and it's just plugged into your network.
Right.
But so what you can do, though, is there are 2 aspects specifically that FPGAs cover off that I think is beneficial versus an ASIC. So you're right with ASICs being the dominant hash power and the ultimate security for the network. But what we also find with FPGAs is it's going to be a lot easier for people at home to get involved with and to start mining and further help with the decentralization of the network and the distribution of the mining. Because I mean, I'm sure you've seen like the Bitcoin mining right now is like 3 pools or whatever, making 50%.
Sure.
So we're hoping more people will also solo mine.
Mm-hmm.
And what we're also hoping is that the barrier to entry is going to be so much lower, because with an ASIC, like some of the ASICs when they come out are like $15,000, I think, for some of the ETH hash ones.
Yeah.
I can't throw 15 grand at it and hope for the best.
Right.
But I can throw $100 or $150 at one and go, you know what, $150, even if I never quite make the return on it, I might. And I'm still going to have some fun along the way, and I'm going to learn a thing or two, and it's going to be educational, and it's going to be fun, and it's going to keep me busy on the weekends so I don't piss off my wife. And right? Like, so for $150, like, yeah, sure, why not? I'll give it a whirl. We'll have some fun. It'll be entertaining, and I will learn something.
Sure.
And so I think that the combination of the two of those is that we're lowering the barrier to entry for people, because you are using commodity hardware. These FPGAs will still be able to be used for something else. So hypothetically, you could sell your FPGA secondhand to somebody else who wants to use it for a different project. Like when you get them, they come with these little brochures, and it's like, you can use this in a smart car or in your microwave and things like that. So this is basically why we are going down the FPGA path, because it is a multifaceted kind of net benefit for us.
So your current algorithms, you don't have an FPGA one today?
Correct.
Okay, gotcha. So the new one, the new Digibyte designed algorithm is an FPGA algorithm.
Correct. You can potentially also mine it on a GPU. It's not going to be as efficient, and I'm not entirely too sure how many people will opt for that. It's going to really depend on the efficiency of GPU versus FPGA and the number of FPGAs that we get on the network. I kind of feel like down the line it will specifically just be FPGA.
Sure.
But at the same time, we're still well aware that we're like, right, goodbye Grossel, Myriad Grossel specifically, no more hash power from that securing the network. We are effectively, like you say, we're limiting the efficiency that you can get specifically to commodity hardware.
It's interesting. So my first thought is, why do people pool in the first place?
So traditionally people pool because A, it's a pain in the ass to solo mine.
Sure.
I'm presuming as well for you, the same reason that you pulled with some of your mates to get things set up was because it's also a pain in the ass to actually do the mining aspect.
Right.
Whereas if we're able to make that and we're able to decrease that barrier to entry, then that's going to be beneficial for people keeping both the blockchain locally as well as them not having to rely on any third party who's taking like a 3% cut.
Sure. Okay. So then why has it become the dominant way to mine? Like, why do people, well, right, it's convenient, but it's convenient and it's potentially the most profitable.
Yep. Well, I mean, you are arguably
for the pool operator, at least. Like, I think
if you're a pool operator, you're going to make shitloads. Like, so we have, who are they? The Blocks Factory, and they make up for about 10% of the hash power of the entire network. And their pool operator, their pool owner is effectively like retired. He can live off just those like 3% rewards. He literally doesn't do shit. He checks into Bitcoin Talk once in a blue moon when things go belly up, when the hard drive of these virtual machines that he's running have filled up. He does nothing else from what I understand. Like, I've never met the guy, but as far as I'm aware, that's all that he does.
Sure.
You can retire.
And what?
He's retired from what I would imagine he's retired. You could retire off the residual income he's getting.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, so when I think about FPGA, like I'm really torn, because on the one hand, like I have GPU mined Monero as well, and simply because it had a low barrier to entry, like I can just buy some GPUs and whatever, for $1,000 I could have a rig that had 6 GPUs and whatever. I mined a few XMR over the lifetime of the machine, but
didn't pay off the GPUs though.
Yeah, if I would have sold them at the right time, they probably would have. But yeah, it's just the whole thing is like, okay, whatever. It was an experiment.
Yep.
But looking at it, I don't see a reason why, if the goal, again, is worldwide cash, if we're going to create a worldwide payments network, tokenization network, and whatever else, this base layer for the, the internet of the future, the internet of value. Like, I don't see a reason why I should be running my own mining network, for the same reason that it's uncommon for someone like me or you to run our own email server. Or I think you are actually a network hub, though. I think you told me on our last call that you have some relationship with your local, like, ISP or something, right?
Yeah, I am the ISP basically. So I'm probably I'm that minority, the 0.1% who is.
Yes. And that's fine. Like, you're that guy, and that's cool. I respect that. In fact, I personally find that admirable. I would like to see how that's set up and see your server stack or whatever else you got. Like, that's fascinating to me, but it's not going to be the experience of everybody, which is my primary aversion also to things like Lightning Network, is that, like, I'm not going to run a RAID backup and have just don't even get me started on Lightning. But the hardware and software and networking limitations to being able to trustlessly run a Lightning node is over the head of almost everybody.
Yeah,
and I see the same thing with.
We can come back to that in our next chat, and we can both basically just have a great rant about Lightning next time.
Perfect.
I think that's.
I love it. But I see the same problem with this necessity for solo mining, and while, like, I think it's cool, again, like, from a nerd factor standpoint, I think it's great. Like, I would like to do it for the same reason, but I don't know that that's supposed to be the backbone for something that has a worldwide usage. I think those things are innately commercial, and I think they must become commercial.
So if I was able to provide you a reason why we should have more people running those nodes, that would be more palatable?
If I had to choose, so here's the thing. There are three things to do. You can get the BTC, like, I run a full node, but I don't mine. Or you can get the people that run a home node and do mine. Or you have everybody is running an SPV wallet, and there's like a dozen miners in the world, and they're all giant commercial server farms. Like, those are the three possibilities, right?
Yep.
If I had to pick one, I would pick the most efficient mining and SPV wallets. And that's truly what BSV is. It's part of why I'm in that camp.
Yeah.
I think that solo mining at home is infinitely better than having a non-mining node. So I don't want to completely disagree that's that you guys are doing, but I don't think it's the best thing.
No, and so I suppose
I'm curious to hear. Yeah, I want to hear what you think is the superlative of it.
Well, no, I'm not entirely too sure. So the interesting thing is, though, like, we cover off both of the bases with the whole ASIC mining, plus the whole fact that we are going to scale on-chain. And we're very well aware that because of that on-chain scaling, it's not going to be able to you can't run it on a thumb drive effectively, like you mentioned.
Right.
It's not going to work. We've already, like, I did the math on how much it's going to grow up and like each year. And I think even when we change later on and we double our block size at the end of this year, it's going to be like 4 terabytes a year if our block sizes are at maximum.
Right.
4 terabytes a year, that's a lot. Plus, on top of that, you've also got to have the data to not only receive the mempool, but then broadcast your blocks back out to people and things like that. Things get orphaned off. So it's not just specifically like that. It's not just 4 terabytes worth that you're receiving.
Right.
So it's the requirements are going to go up. Now, I suppose for us, the interesting thing is as well, because of, so we're always going to have the ASICs and things like that. We're not looking to get rid of them completely, but by having the ability to solo mine at home on your own node, making it as easy as possible with an FPGA, we're also looking to do something similar with Digi Assets. So if you wanted to, you could have your full Digi Assets node there as well. So you can be, and then we kind of, this is where we move from being the home into the small business or even the large enterprise.
Sure.
You can run your own full Digi Assets node, complemented with a full Digibyte node, and you can be mining at the same time to not only support the network, subsidize your own node costs and things like that, but to also provide that hash power and security for the network that you are building your asset on top of. Right. So that's where it kind of gets really interesting as well, because not only is this the base layer, you've also got your second layer, and then you've got all three of them kind of tying together and meshing in this really weird kind of way. And I think that's an interesting value proposition, but I've not stopped and kind of analytically had somebody kind of like butt heads with me enough about it and about why would you even bother doing this because X is dumb or this is dumb. So
right. I mean, it's interesting. I mean, I don't know everything. I like the idea of allowing commercial interests to choose what makes the most sense. But I really firmly believe in that kind of pure capitalist sort of Ayn Rand, like, you know, Hank Rearden in Atlas Shrugged was never the bad guy. Everybody thought he was, but he was holding the world on his shoulders. He was doing it for a profit, but, you know, what, do you do things for free? So it's like, I just believe it. So for me, it comes at a fundamental level. I believe that somebody that has an incentive to do the very best job for a lot of customers is going to do a better job than I would for the altruism of serving the network and keeping it decentralized.
Yeah. And this is where having more nodes is going to be beneficial for us, especially with the SPV, because, like, let's be honest, if you're in Venezuela, you have your cell phone and that's it. You can't peer-to-peer transact by walking around with a laptop under your arms and a bunch of like USB hard drives attached to it because you can't fit 4 terabytes on your own internal storage. So you have to have an SPV node on your cell phone.
Right.
But you can't have one person doing SPV for the world. So we've got to then try and further decentralize that as the, like you say, to hold up the rest of it.
Right. Well, and that's the thing. Like, you need, like, the most efficient thing is to have a small world network. So
the most efficient thing is a database that one person controls.
But. Well, yes, but that's a security risk. So I mean, and that's the thing is, like, Bitcoin.
It's the trade-off.
Yeah, but it's in balance, and that's the thing that I think is very difficult for people to plan is ongoing balance. Like, Bitcoin was planned as a roadmap to achieve balance through economic incentives, but as people screw with it, or as anybody tries to decide who would be a better overlord of the network, you start to see the network's values skew. And like with Monero, for example, when ASICs were mining Monero, there was still lots of GPU miners, and there was growing hash power, and it was growing in security. And then as soon as, you know, quote unquote, the community, which truly I see it as mostly just the development team, looked at it and said, we don't want ASICs to be centralizing the network. They then take whoever has the commit keys for the repo, and those guys become the central point of failure of the network. And so with the notion of keeping mining decentralized, they made the software centralized. And so they kicked the balance of the economics completely out of whack. And I don't know what the consequence is going to be long-term for Monero, but what I do know is that these things are long in the tooth, and we'll see, you know, the same thing with like a welfare program or something. You know, we've got in the United States, we had housing projects were an abject failure in the United States. The idea is let's take poor people and we'll put them in dignified homes, and they can have this neighborhood. We'll subsidize food and education and everything else. And in many places it works. I think in places like Denmark, or in places even probably like New Zealand, these things work quite well. Well, in the United States, they didn't. And so we need to ask ourselves why. Like, why did they become the most violent places on earth for a generation? From the late 1960s until the late 1980s, you were more likely to get murdered in Chicago or New York City or Los Angeles than you were at any other war zone on earth. And it was because of the consequences of economic planning backfiring, because no small group can make a decision that effectively manages the lives of all kinds of things that you don't know the variables on. Like, we look at the poor as a class, but that can be the poor from sub-Saharan Africa in the last 10 years, or it can be from South America, or it could be someone who is a 3rd or 4th generation American of Irish descent who was raised by bootleggers, and then they all become these different gang classes that are all fighting each other. And that's what we saw. We saw in Chicago, we had Southside Irish gangs fighting Southside black gangs. And then the Southside and Westside Puerto Rican and Mexican gangs moved in the late 80s and 90s. And they've been having a gang war in Chicago for 40 plus years, 50 years. And
I guess the thing is as well, like, so for us, like coming back to specifically what you mentioned about like a small group of people determining those, what are effectively economics for a larger group of people, the smaller group of people that are making those decisions are not economists. And it's funny because I even say the same thing specifically in New Zealand politics. The people that are trying to make X, Y, Z decisions are not economists, and the economists are saying, do this, but the politicians are saying we're going to do this because it's going to make us popular in the short term and it's going to provide a band-aid for this.
Right.
And so the same thing happens, I guess, with crypto economics as well, is that we are, like, the people with the commit keys are not economists. They're developers. They're programmers. Much in the way that I'm not a programmer, I'm more of an entertaining face that's sometimes fun to look at. Like,
yeah, same.
But I'm not an economist.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got your feet more firmly in that camp as well because of your experience and your morals and that sort of thing as well. But for me, I'm neither a developer nor an economist, nor am I as much of a free thinker as you are. So I'm literally, at least just hopefully, the guy that makes the funny jokes. That's and teaches people. But at the same time, like, so that's why I would say it's not up to me specifically to make those decisions, or at least I would bloody well hope not.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to make the wrong one every time statistically. So, you know, it's
well, and that's the problem is like you said, the economists versus the politicians is a great example, because the politicians are having a popularity contest. And it's the same thing in crypto. I mean, it's a big Daniel Krawitz is they call him the Emperor of Bitcoin. He's another just a Bitcoin philosopher. Mm-hmm. And he talks about the beauty contest. We're having a beauty contest, and it's true. And so we've got like people on Twitter that are trying to virtue signal or maybe even the opposite of it, like to shame people into joining whatever.
Yeah.
And like that doesn't mean they're right. Even if everyone agrees, it doesn't mean that the network is going to self-sustain because everyone thinks it is. Like, it can help because passionate people can get things done. But if the economics are so broken, then it doesn't matter. And then it's all going to collapse in and of itself, which it allows somebody who's analytical to take a look at something like XRP and say, well, sure, that solves some problems, but it breaks others. The primary thing that it breaks is the centralization of consensus rules, that essentially Ripple Corporation can decide what consensus is because fuck you, we're Ripple Corporation. And that's the whole conversation. And,
well, the irony there as well is like you say, the pretty face, like the popularity contest is because for so long they were so blended with their name and literally the coin, and the fucking daemon itself is called Ripple Daemon. It's not called XRP Daemon, it's called Ripple Daemon.
Yeah.
And so they can win that popularity contest because they have that backing already and things like that, and they can make things more palatable even though it's not. And yeah. Well, I'm stopping myself there because I know that specifically between you and I know that we will.
It'll segue hard, I'm sure, but it becomes, you know, and I think the primary thing about Ripple, like, yes, it's the network consensus. That's a problem. But the other problem with XRP is that it's pretty plainly a security, and it was never registered as a security. So I think that network will more than likely be taken down by the SEC rather than its own network economics. And that's something to consider because, you know, regardless of how people feel about, it's decentralized and it's not a whatever, like that's still a valid concern that, you know, if for example, EOS or EOS, whatever you want to call it, is a security, but it was not registered as a security, but it's been used in such a way that makes it a security, then everybody involved in creating it has broken the law and they'll be fined. And then Right. And then anyone that's involved in that project from a developer standpoint or block producer standpoint is mutually liable for that fraudulent securities offering. And none of them are lawyers. And I wouldn't feel good to watch them taken down and fined, maybe millions or billions of dollars even.
I would.
But it depends. And that's the thing. Like
they are competing for that hash power. They are a competing network.
Right.
And I mean, aside from the fact that especially like on EOS and I think it's Tron as well, there are shit tons of spam and applications that are simply worthless, that are gambling applications that are putting shit on the blockchain that don't need to.
Right.
Like they'd literally just be better off. Yeah. Like
it's bad. I don't know that it's immoral. And the thing is that I have to separate. This is what I'm saying. Like I like you and I take you seriously. And like if Digibyte ended up having a big 0-day event or the whole network took a shit, I would feel bad for you as a person. I wouldn't feel bad
for me, but not the project.
Well, right. But at the same time, like I wouldn't necessarily feel bad. Let's say, there's a bug in the code and the whole thing takes a shit. Like I wouldn't necessarily feel bad for Jared because I don't know him and I don't care. I don't know if he's a nice guy. He may be, but at the same time, like
you're still out on that one.
Well, there you go. But BTC is another one. Like I would feel bad for the common person that was holding BTC under the assumption that it was something that it wasn't. I would, however, not feel bad for somebody like Jimmy Song because he's a dickhead. And so at the end of the day, like, okay, good, he got his comeuppance and that's fine. But I do feel really bad for, the probably 50 people that live in my town that have some Bitcoin because they thought it was going to be a good investment. Yeah. And so we need to differentiate that too, that a calamity is not really about, I would like to see the bad people punished. I would like to see the ignorant people taught a lesson as lightly as possible.
Well, that's the thing that we saw specifically with BitConnect is people were out there and they were taking mortgages and shit to throw into BitConnect, and it all ended up going to zero and they lost it all. And so that's why I'm very vocal when it comes to things like token pay, where you cannot trust the consensus model because they were 75% pre-mined. Derek owns the majority. And yeah, sure, maybe they end up doing something like they make a product then and you get something out of it. You could still do the same with BitConnect back in the day, but the thing is were token pay a proof of work model where him holding those 75% had zero bearing, just like with Ripple. And Ripple holding 100%, now significant like holding 60%, holds no bearing over the consensus model, despite the fact the consensus model is fucked regardless, and they still hold the keys to it. But them holding that 60% of Ripple doesn't actually affect the consensus model. That's not something that I take issue with, specifically like with token. So again, we come back to people, you've got to kind of save them, but you look like an asshole because you're like, no, this is a bad project. And people are like, you just bought at the top and sold at the bottom. I wouldn't touch your shit with a 10-foot barge pole if I, but I am interested in making sure that people don't get bitten by the next BitConnect, because that's bad for us. It's bad for the space. It's bad for people's, from the outside looking in on it. And nobody wins except for the person who started it, really, or the early people who've gone. And so it's tough because you've got to weather those like criticisms despite the fact that they're not really valid. And it sucks. What can you do?
It does. It does suck. And I mean, this is the nature of competition. This is, Darwin's savannah too. Like, sorry, we don't need redundant grass-eating animals on this savannah plain, especially not if there's cheetahs that need to eat. And
they're going to come and they'll swallow them up. Or maybe the antelope are too dumb and they drown themselves or something. Who knows?
Right. Absolutely.
But it's interesting because I do think that we will see like some kind of like more of a convergence of the blockchains. I don't think we need 8,000 projects out there. Perhaps, I mean, obviously, so if you go to CoinMarketCap, a lot of them are tokens and assets that are issued on top. Many of them are for projects that would like to one day become their own independent blockchain, but I don't think they need to be, because they are then fighting for that limited finite supply of energy.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and then we see what it's going to be. I think the halvenings are going to be brutal. I think we're going to see a lot of consolidation. So on that, we definitely agree. And Lightning sucks, so we agree on that.
Yeah.
And
maybe we'll do that next time. We can just kind of sit down and have a chat about why we're so anti it and things. Because I feel like there's still a lot more that we could explore there and potentially disagree on part of the ways to get there, but also still agree that Lightning is definitely not the way that we want to take it because it's bad because of reasons.
Right. Well, if Lightning is the ultimate goal of BTC, then BTC was just an ICO for Lightning, which makes BTC an illegal securities offering, in my opinion.
I mean, maybe that's what's needed in order for people to find Satoshi, right? Like, because
there you go.
They haven't been able to find him thus far, so who knows?
For sure. So we should probably wrap up. My wife is going to be wondering why the heck I spend my Friday night on the on the phone with some Kiwi guy, but
thank you so much for your time.
It's been great. Always love talking to you. I hope everybody learns something delightful.
Yeah. Or at the very least, maybe they'll go out there and be a little bit more combative and understand why they are that way and why that's actually okay, or why they will be less critical of other people who are being combative.
Well, come debate. If there's one thing that I hope people get out of this conversation is that debate is good, that we can still be friends and disagree, and ultimately we all benefit the most from finding the best thing and competing to make that best thing make us all better.
It is interesting. So I did an interview recently with Crypto Candor, and there were a couple of things that came out of her overview specifically of Digibyte, and she was like, these are the weak points. And originally there was one or two people who were really quite taken aback, like, this is bad. Don't talk about the weak points. And I was like, no. Talk about the weak points. Let's address them. Let's fix that stuff. Let's do better. It's totally fine to have a discussion with somebody and for them to come out and go, you know what, actually, this is your weak point. Yep. And like, you don't have to feel personally attacked at all, but maybe you can learn something from it and grow both as a person or as a project. And hopefully that's what we've kind of done a little bit of today.
I think so. I think we did it. So cool. Let's wrap it up.
Thank you so much for your time, man. Thank you for having me on your show. And do you want to let people know where they can find out more about you and Crypto Traders Pro?
Yes. So everybody, first of all, should check out CryptoTradersPro.com/Bitcoin Bootcamp, because we are doing a seminar tour. We're going to hit Chicago and Austin, learn everything about blockchain technology with a focus on portfolio management, trading, remaining profitable, remaining stable at the very least. And if you want to subscribe to the podcast, you can find us on iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher, Amazon, Google, and everywhere else that stuff is consumed, as well as YouTube, but everything can be connected at CryptoTradersPro.com. Josiah, where can anybody learn more about you and or Digibyte?
So if you want to join in, we encourage people to come and be part of the community. Even if you're just sitting and spectating, you can jump in. All of the links are at the bottom of digibyte.io. We also have a wiki, which is we would encourage people to contribute to. So that's dgbwiki.com. If you want to find out more about me on Twitter, I'm at dgb_chilling. And there's also at DigibyteCoin on Twitter as well. Finally, if you want to stay up to date with the news, like just the juicy news, follow us on something like Blockfolio, Signal, or Delta. We post out like the specifically important only things on there. And yeah.
Beautiful. Thanks, brother.
Appreciate your time, man. Thanks again.
Yeah, for sure. Talk to you soon.